Well, this is a 2018 Caravan. It's got 58,000 miles on it. The oil cooler is leaking. This vehicle was actually just detailed, so a lot of the oil that was on this transmission bell housing that you could have obviously seen is now gone. But if you have this particular problem, you're going to get a bunch of oil right there on the bell housing. So there's a little bit there. You probably can't see it with the camera, but there's a little bit of oil there, and that oil will accumulate and run down the bell housing of the transmission, and that means you got an oil cooler leaking. And just about all these leak. This one only has 58,000 miles on it, so just be aware. The only thing that I've done so far was pulled the petcock out of the radiator, draining the coolant. You want to do that because when you pull the oil cooler off, coolant can get down into the crankcase through the oil passages. You want to try to avoid that as best as possible, so drain the coolant before you start this job. The petcock is on the... Oh man, that thing is on there. The petcock is a little red tab on the driver's side on the bottom of the radiator. It's straight below you right there. You're going to want to take that off, start draining the coolant out. Take the cover off. I'm going to pull the intake as well. There's 3 tabs on the intake, and then there's a Phillips head right here on the boot. I did make a video already doing the rear-wheel drive / four-wheel drive version of this. Those are a lot more difficult. These are pretty easy. The front-wheel drives are. These ones are honestly really easy. Now, once you have that off, there's going to be a few little tabs and stuff. You're going to want to just start disconnecting this harness around here, pulling off the intake, the elbow. So disconnect the intake air temperature sensor, map sensor, throttle position sensor, disconnect all those. Coworker was borrowing these. Pull that off. Got the Christmas tree. Wiggle it. Try not to break it. If they break, sometimes they break. Nothing you can do about it. Red tab on the throttle position sensor. You gotta kind of lift up on it and push it in. So, see that'll be pushed in. Not sure if the camera can even see this. Feel really stupid if you can't see. So there's a tab right there that locks in. Let me lock it. I don't want to break it. Well, anyways, it'll be locked in, and you just grab it with the end of a screwdriver and just push it. And that'll unlock it. You got to unlock the red tab first. PCB line. Another PCB line right here. Push all that off. And then these just have little ears on them that bite down into this one bites into the aluminum on the throttle body. This one bites into the plastic on the intake. It's just there to secure the harness. So just pop those off. Be careful when taking this off, because this is a solid line, so you can actually, if you try to push straight back on it, you can break the PCV valve off on that back intake. So, or back valve cover, I mean. Working the vacuum booster line off. Trying. Man, that thing's on there. Let me try something else. Grab one of these hose pliers, that way I can grab it and try to twist it, break it free. There we go. And then just pull it off. So that's off. It's all disconnected there. And we got, so the way this pops in, there's two like pop rivets on the back side of it. I think there's two, there might only be one. And then there's a push pin right here. Let me get my other ones. These ones are better for like grabbing them. The ones you have to grab down on or up. Holy crap. Jesus. So that's supposed to pull out of there, but the whole, there you go. There's that little push pin, and then you got rivets on the back that just pop down on. Get those off. And just, you don't even have to take it off, just move it out of the way. I'd actually recommend leaving that like that. Don't try to pull it up out of there, because then you'll just fight getting it back on those. When I say pop rivets, I'm talking about these things. It just kind of snaps down on it and holds it there. Okay, now you're gonna have to get this intake off. The only thing you really have left to do is disconnect the 10mm bolts or nuts. Damn, that thing. You know, for 2018, everything on this car is pretty stubborn. Holy crap. Jesus. Bad car to make a fucking video on. Okay, so what we're going to do is there's a 10mm nut here on the front here. There's one there, and then there's one here. You got to take those nuts off. That's what I'll do now. This vehicle, I'll just use a little wrench, pop them loose, and then you should be able to wiggle them off with your hands. Don't drop them, because you need to put them back. So there you go, 2 of those 10mm nuts. Now on the back side, there's going to be, oops, let me secure that. Now there's another bracket right here. This metal bracket right here. It's got a 10mm nut here and here. On the Jeep video that I did, this same thing, it's the exact same on a Jeep that I did, but it's, you know, this way instead of left to right. It's front to back. All this stuff is the exact same. And I'll show you, actually, if you've seen the other video. I don't know why you'd watch both of them, but if you've seen the other video, you can't take this bracket off like on this one. On this engine, because it's side mounted, there's a 13mm bolt down there. You can loosen up and take this bracket off, which makes this job a whole lot easier. Okay. Need a light. Where's my light? There it is. Yeah, okay. I don't want to come off. And this is just what I'm doing right now is getting this this plastic piece off of the stud. It's just securing this harness in place. Man, this thing is being difficult. There it goes. Okay. So that's what I was undoing. That right there, and that reveals the 13mm nut right there. It's actually like a nut bolt. And then once you take that off, that whole bracket, you can move that out of the way, and then the intake pretty much just comes right off. Not sure if this setup works or not. It's not going to work. Don't remember exactly my setup to get this, but I imagine it's something like this. Oops. So now that bracket's loose and you can just pull it back and away. And then the only thing that's holding the intake on now is the 8mm bolts in the middle, and then you can just pop it right off. So let me get that bolt to fill. There it is. So that is what secures it. It's like I said, it's like a bolt with a stud on the end of it that wire harness secures to. And I think there's 7, I think. 2, 4, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 8mm bolts to hold the intake on. Now the intake should just be able to pull up, go in, come off. Up and off. And this piece is just a vibration damper insulator guy. Alright. Probably at this point I would pull the oil filter cap off. That way you break the suction that's inside the oil filter housing. This is going to be full of oil. If you take the cap off and break that suction, all the oil that's in it will, you know, run down to the oil pan. Rather than when you pull the oil cooler off, it's just going to just dump oil everywhere, which is a mistake that I myself actually continually do. I always forget that if you just take this damn cap off, then most of the oil will run down and not make a mess. Let that drain for a second. We'll start working on the injector clips. This harness is very stiff. 58,000 miles. Listen to that thing. I'm not a fan of Dodge. I hate Chrysler. garbage. I hate them. Pull those out of the way. I'm gonna get a pick to pull up the red tabs. So this is what I'll use. Sometimes I use a bigger one, but just grab that tab and pull up on it. And then just squeeze the black tab sometimes. Sometimes I'll push it with the pick too. Yep. Okay, so here's what you're doing. You're pulling up on this to unlock it and then pushing this to release it. Most of the time these things honestly just come right off, but I give that to Chrysler. Even though the red tabs are annoying as shit. Alright, so that's out of the way. Do the back one. Get this thing out of the way as well. Those injectors are out. You take off these two harness clips, disconnect the harness from the lower intake. There's one, and this one too. There you go. There. Some of your shit came. Right there, the gaskets. Now the lower manifold is going to have 8 bolts, and they're all 8mm as well. Go. Now the lower manifold will come off, but we left the fuel line connected. You don't have to disconnect that. You can just leave it connected and move the intake out of the way, which is how I do it. There we go. Now we have access to the cooler itself. Disconnect those two sensors. Got some e-torques in there. Oh yeah, that thing was looking pretty good. I'm actually going to show you before I pull it off. You can see just how much oil pools up down in there. So you can see past it. You can see all that oil pooled up down in there. And the only thing you gotta undo yet is the coolant hose and then these e-torques, and I think they're E6. Let's see, E8. Yep, they're E8. get that hose off as well. I always like to pull it off like the way that I'm doing it. It's pretty hard to get your hands down in there to get this clamp off. So what I do is I pull the coolant up like this, then I pull the cooler off of the hose like that. Oops, it's still, yep. Okay, and that's what we're left with. A bunch of shit down here. Try to clean all this out. And then use like a suction gun. Clean all that out. That's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna pause this. Okay, so I got this stuff relatively clean down here. The main thing you want to do is make sure you just get the bulk of the oil and coolant overflow out of the passages down there. And make sure you get the new O-ring sealing surfaces clean. There's 4 of them. And then there's a 5th O-ring here for the oil. Make sure all that stuff's clean. And it just goes back in. Down in there. And you just got to kind of line it up in the oil passage and then just gently press it down in. And you'll feel it when it's seated. Right there, it's seated. So. We're gonna get, I did change this clamp over to a worm style just so it's easier, and I think that's an 8mm, 8 or a 7, I'm not sure. Let me grab a socket. This is an 8. There we go. That's tight. We're good there. Reconnect the oil and coolant temp sensors. The bottom one is coolant. The big gray one is coolant, and the smaller one is oil. Those are locked in. She's installed. Reverse order of removal. Put the intake back on. I've already cleaned up this gasket surfaces pretty good. All right. Yep. Obviously, this would be a good time for you to replace the gaskets if you have to, depending on the mileage of your vehicle. This one's only got 58,000 miles. These gaskets still have quite a bit of a lip on them over the sealing surface. So I'm not going to replace them. You can if you want to. Don't tell me that I have to, because I'll just argue with you because you're wrong. You don't have to. You can easily reuse rubber molded gaskets. Just be smart about it.
What else do you call it?
What?
What else do you call it?
Call what?
You're taking money from people.
What are you talking about?
You called Jake a thief. I said, I know where you got that from me. So I said, what else do you call it if you steal it?
Yeah. Start in the middle. Okay, lower intake's reinstalled. You attach your wire harness clips. Plug your injectors back in. Make sure you hear the audible click when you're installing these. Or reconnecting them, I should say. So you should get one click from the connector and then another click from the red tab. So okay, harness is reinstalled. Look over everything, just make sure you're not forgetting anything.